Today on What Went Wrong, we talk about what happens when you on the rules of your universe. Hi, I'm Brett Mauser, and I've shot over 40 feature films. And along for the ride was my best friend, Jeff Price, as actor, and even though you're not really consider yourself an actor. So today we're going to talk about the rules of the universe that you create for your film. Jeff, do you want to start it off?
Sure. The idea is that the universe that you create has got rules. Everything's got rules. I mean, we exist on planet Earth, and we have, a law of gravity, physics, water's wet, sand is not, those kind of things, to where it's established that you are a earthling on Earth doing Earth things, right? And so a person existing on that planet or in that place is going to abide by certain rules. And that's how you ground your reality. The problem is when you have established rules of the universe and then you go changing them, how it screws with people. The example I give is, a good example I can give, I guess, is a Superman. Superman looks like a human being, but he's not. He's an alien. He's from Krypton. But he can fly. He's indestructible. He can live in space, underwater, can shoot heat beams or laser beams from his eyes, cold breath. He's got that Superman S thing that comes out and does that
The
stuff.
Saran Wrap S.
The Saran Wrap S that comes out and does awesome things. And whenever it's been asked, how does Superman get his powers? The answer's always been, it's your planet's yellow sun. And that's it. What? It doesn't make any sense. But the thing is, the audience has bought into it. I could go to a Superman movie, and when he says, "Oh, it's the yellow sun," okay, the yellow sun, that's great. And his only weakness is kryptonite. What's kryptonite? Oh, it's a piece of his old planet. Ah, it's green. Oh, okay. So green rocks equal kryptonite. Got it. How does it work? No one knows. It doesn't matter. It's never explained. But the point is, it's not explained except to say, Earth's yellow sun, and then he says, and kryptonite is my weakness. And that's it. The rules of the universe are established, and everything goes from that. If we were to see something happen that didn't fit into the rules of the universe, like all of a sudden Superman's not flying. He's just walking.
Now, let's jump out real quick. I want to kind of emphasize what the rules of the universe are, and that they're not the rules of our universe.
No.
For instance, people will make fun of them all the time, and I get it. But I wrote a blog article once about Fast and Furious. Ridiculous movies. I'll sit there sometimes and watch as they're flying. He's on the hood of a car. The car slams into a thing. He flies, catches somebody midair as he's going 120 miles an hour, slams into another car. That doesn't matter, because in a movie like Fast and the Furious, you're going in. You know what you're buying into.
Yep.
And it's just about seeing cool stunts.
Yep.
And that's, there's a scene in I guess one of the last ones Paul Walker was in, as the bus is falling over and he's, running up the bus, and he jumps and he grabs it. And I'm, when I saw it in the trailer and everything, I was like, okay. And then I found out that wasn't CGI. That he's actually on. I mean, they have him on wires, but he's running on that bus as it goes
cool.
down. So it now no longer becomes, it becomes a different type of movie,
right? Where
you're there to watch crazy people do crazy shit.
Exactly.
And
you've bought into that universe. I got no problem with that.
Yeah, the safe. They're robbing something, and they got this huge safe. And they're dragging it behind two muscle cars. Mm-hmm. And it's flying across and it's smashing into shit. It's a completely different film when you realize that that's practical. That's not a CGI safe that's flying back and forth. They actually took, I think it was a pickup truck, and cut everything off, so it's just this little thing, and put this fake shell of the safe around it. Mm-hmm. So that's all practical. That's happening in the real world. Right. And then, like you said, when you go into Superman, yes, yellow sun. Okay, it doesn't work it doesn't work in logic and physics. So I'm not gonna buy into that.
Right.
But when you're making a movie that's supposed to be set in the real world, or it is a historical film,
right,
or something along those lines, there are things that will, as you said before, boot you out.
Yeah, the concept is, I talk about this all the time, is getting booted out of a movie, or getting tossed out or thrown out of a movie. You and I have talked about this. I know movies aren't made for me, you know. My reality, what I understand about certain things, there are certain times I can watch certain movies and I'm just like, it's so bad or egregious to my sensibilities that it boots me out. And one of the things like Red Tails, okay, about the Tuskegee Airmen. Tuskegee Airmen, being what they were, have a great story to tell. And I love that they were telling a story. However, they got into the CGI P-51s and P-40 Warhawks and P-51 Mustangs, which I know very well. I understand aviation. I understand how planes fly and what they can do. And I'm watching these planes defy physics. It's a historical movie. It's a movie about the history of these individuals and what they did and how they did what they did. Don't give me
science fiction. And I was like, boom, I got booted out of the movie and I stopped enjoying it. Because I realized that they were no longer portraying a historical, it's no longer a historical depiction of a movie. It was a glorification of the people there for the purposes of making a movie. Ugh. You know, and there's all we can talk about movies that did that, Pearl Harbor, and that took Titanic, historical things, and made it into whatever they were. But well, let's go in the middle ground here.
Yeah.
It seems contradictory, but the Last Jedi. Very first scene I'm watching, they have bombs, and these bombers, and they drop and they fall in space.
In space.
Even though it's science fiction and we've got the Force and all that, why am I pulled? I mean, I'm out of the movie the rest of the 2 hours.
I am too.
For that one scene, because they're an hour into the film, I'm still thinking about that.
Yeah.
It's like, how did they fall?
I have the same problem. And people say, well, the problem with that is you take their universe, okay, which has science fiction, which has Jedi, the mystical, magical, samurai monks of this universe, aliens and Star Destroyers and all this stuff, and I can buy into all that, and artificial gravity for ships. Got it. But the problem is with a bomber, first of all, the bombers were a terrible design. They were slow. Guys in Vietnam could tell you, if your bomber's not going 600, 700 miles an hour, you're going to die. You got to be hauling ass for that to work. But they open the bomb bay, and without any explanation, these bombs fall out of the ship onto this other ship, and it makes no sense. Because it's never been explained that there's some kind of gravitational push for these bombs. It's never been put out to you that says these bombs are designed to pull themselves toward the nearest target. There's no guidance. There's none of that stuff is specified. You are left as an audience member to just decipher or determine on your own that gravity pulled these bombs out because they wanted that great scene. It's crap. And people say, well, the gravity of the planet. I'm like, really? Because the International Space Station's up above us and it doesn't fall. Space shuttles would launch and they didn't fall. There's all kinds of space debris orbiting the planet.
The bombs would just go into orbit.
Yeah. What would happen was the bomb would come out and, given its speed and trajectory, continue upon that vector until such time as it was acted upon by the gravity. And eventually it would fall to the planet, landing God knows where. But it would not come out in a predictable manner at that speed with that kind of acceleration. Because there's nothing that says that gravity works that way on that planet. If it was like Jupiter, maybe you could get the concept. But even then, there are planets, there are moons above Jupiter, that do not fall into Jupiter, even though it is massive and has a massive amount of gravity. But somehow bodies in space remain in space because something Newton, something physics. And I got bound. I had the same problem. I was like, I can't even do this now. There's all kinds of other problems with Last Jedi, which we could make another film on that.
Okay, well, in the Innocent Saga, now I want to change course a little bit about and talk about the progression of the rules of the universe, or how you do break your own rules. And I think the Innocent Saga has a prime example of that, because as I've been re-editing them, and that was 10 years ago. We understood the rules of the universe, but we hadn't had quite as many conversations like this before then. So I didn't really notice. I didn't really pay attention to that when I was writing the script. It made sense to me at the time. And I think it still does. But in like the very first chapter of the Innocent Saga, The Innocent Killers, we're introduced to Blue Star, which is the time viewing project. And they talk to Dr. Fish, and time travel comes up. Well, because the Blue Star is about seeing back in time. Right. And the question comes up, well, can you travel back in time? And Dr. Fish says, no, it's not possible. Even Einstein knew that, blah, blah, blah.
Time travel is not possible. Is it, Dr. Fish?
Well, as cool as it would be, no. Even Einstein knew that.
So some might say that we created this rule that, okay, time travel doesn't exist.
Right.
And then later as it goes along, they discover time travel.
With 2 gateways, I can jump to any precise millisecond.
Before I defend that, how would you address that?
Well,
because it even goes so much far as to say, there are moments where they talk about, once time travel is discovered, that you can't go forward in time, because the future doesn't exist yet.
No, you can't go to the future. The future hasn't been written yet. It doesn't exist. That's why Blue Star couldn't see it.
Right. But then later in the series, we do discover that you can go back, you can go forward in time, but you have to do it a special way.
Right.
Because the future is written. So is there a difference between breaking the rules of your universe? And I don't feel like we're changing the rules of the universe. I feel like we're discovering new rules to the universe.
And that's the idea, is someone says it can't be done. That's kind of like saying, oh, men will never fly. Well, we do. Believe me. It's like you can never leave sight of land. You'll fall off the edge of the planet. Well, yes, you can. And so it's not a question of you setting the rules of the universe. You set the rules of your universe as they existed at that point. And then at some point in the whole thing, you determine that this is possible. I often refer to things as being the Kittyhawk Moment, the Wright brothers' first flight. I talk about how until that time we couldn't do this, whatever it was. But after that time, we could. And it's not like the rules of our universe changed. It's just the rules of the universe at that time did not allow anyone to understand the concept of whatever. But then through new technology or new discoveries, we determined we can fly.
And I think that goes back to the Midichlorians of Star Wars, where in the Innocent Saga, that progression is natural and it's part of the story. It's essential to the story, and it was going to be that way from the beginning. It wasn't sort of just thrown in there. But in the Star Wars universe, what point do the midichlorians serve? They don't add to the story in any way. They're not really essential to that understanding. It didn't have to be, in there at all. It violated those rules.
It absolutely violated the rules, and which is why people were so pissed off about it. And once again, we've talked about Star Wars, so the very first movie, you're very quickly into this movie, and Ben and Luke are talking, and he's like, "What's the Force?" And Ben Kenobi says, it is I'm not going to quote it exactly because I don't know it that well, but it's a energy field exerted by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, and holds the galaxy together. And that's really all the explanation is. Now, we had already seen, I don't know if it happened yet. We'd seen Darth Vader force choke someone from across the room earlier, or if it wasn't earlier, because I don't know him that well. But you see it. You see, what's his name? Colonel, what's his name is bad mouthing, the Jedi, and Vader just kind of goes and he starts choking, and the audience is like, "Holy snap! What the hell?" And then Vader says a very profound phrase: "I find your lack of faith disturbing." Faith being a word that kind of equates with religion or belief. Okay, so basically he says that you don't believe bothers me. But what he's really saying is, shut the hell up, Don't talk bad about the Jedi, even though he destroyed them. And so the audience sees that, and then we hear from Luke and Ben, this is the Force, and then it goes Empire Strikes Back, we meet Yoda, and we see the Force in action, we see all this crazy stuff, and you're like, oh, the Force is for real, you know? And they never explain it. But in the rules of their universe, they don't have to explain it. It's like yellow sun. It's this energy field. Boom, and everyone buys into it. And so everyone built up in their own mind what the Force meant. And that's what was so cool about Star Wars, is even though it was this huge movie and this big phenomenon, every single person had their own interpretation of what the Force was. And I remember as a kid, you know, sitting around with my friends talking about how the Force works and what guys can do. Can they do this? Can they fly an airplane from the ground because they're using the Force? And how does it work? Does it have a range? You know? And you set up the rules. This is how it's going to work, which is why in episode 1, when he pops up with that, everyone's like, what? And then episodes, 8 and 9, when all of a sudden, Mary Sue Ray is, force choking, people are doing stuff from across the galaxy. Is like, why not just have a bunch of Jedi sitting in a building somewhere and just doing stuff from everywhere else? Because why would you have to go anywhere?
Yeah, and it goes back to the hyperdrive. It's like, well, why didn't people do that before?
What? Oh yeah, the hyperdrive. That's another problem. It's
and then they try to retcon it in like the last one where they say, well, that was a 1 in a million move.
1 in a million move.
Well, why?
Why?
They say, because, they saw them pointing at, the bad guys on the ship saw what she was doing and they panicked. If it was a 1 in a million, they'd go, let her try.
That was the thing. It's like, if it was 1 in a million, never been done before, they start turning toward the ship, they're like, here they come, and they point their turbo lasers at it and let them have it. A PT boat doesn't a battleship doesn't freak out when a PT boat points at it. You got torpedoes on it. Okay, he's got a couple of torpedoes on, but come on. Bring it. I got 16-inch guns and 5-inch guns and 40-millimeter guns and 20-millimeter guns and machine guns, and you've got a machine gun and 2 torpedoes.
To wrap this up, when you're building the world of your film, of the script and the world that you're creating,
building your universe, yeah.
You'll eventually write yourselves into corners, or you'll want to explain things, and you have to have faith in the audience that they will suspend disbelief enough to give you that leeway of the universe that you've built.
Right.
But when you start contradicting that,
right,
you have to have a perfectly good reason for doing so that makes logical sense.
Exactly.
In terms of the Innocent Saga.
In terms of the universe.
Where you understand, this was their understanding up to this point. Mm-hmm. And that's probably one of the reasons why, maybe if they would have done the Midichlorians in a different
if you'd have started off with the Midichlorians, because as it was, you had this great, awesome thing that everyone built into whatever it was, and it was like that for, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years, and then all of a sudden you spring Midichlorians on them in 1999, when the movies came out in 77, so they had all this time.
Well, also the chronology of it, because the original trilogy took place after the Midichlorians thing, so Ben would have told them, it's Midichlorians.
Ben would have said that.
Whereas opposed to like the third trilogy with Mary Sue Ray. If they would have discovered then, oh wow, it's Midichlorians. That's what's giving the power of the Force. Right. It still would have pissed people off, but it still, I think, would have flowed better, that it would, that it made a little bit more sense that, you discovered this. Yeah. This is what it is.
Or it could have been something like we discovered that it was, or whatever, because as it is, you basically reduced the Force to a blood disease.
Yeah.
And like I said, one of the things we did talk about was after Order 66, why didn't they capture all the dead Jedi and suck the blood out of them and then inject that blood into other people and boom, instant Jedi?
Yeah. An army of Jedi that are completely compliant.
An army of Jedi that do whatever you want because you put them into clones. All of a sudden these become Jedi clones. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, when you're building the rules of your universe,
obey the rules.
Obey the rules of your universe. If you want your hero to be able to fly, establish why. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to say, it's because of this or because of that. How does Wolverine do this and how does so-and-so do this? How does Superman do this?
Yeah, and you don't need to explain every single little detail, because and those are people who do feel like you have to. Well, I need to explain this. Look at Superman. Superman's the prime example.
Right.
People bought into that for decades. They'll buy into yours.
Yeah.
Just be consistent.
Be consistent. And if you want to, sometime we could talk about like Star Wars versus Star Trek, because those are two, it's a dichotomy of a sci-fi, one who explains everything, one who explains nothing. But
they both work.
They both work because you've established that's what you're going to see. And though the audience expects to see it or they want to see it, and if you have someone new, when they're watching it, they buy into it, and then that's it from then on. Don't go changing it in the middle. That's where you lose your audience. That's where you trust your audience. Trust that they have bought into it. If they haven't bought into it, they're not going to be watching.
Yeah.
You
would have lost them in the first.
You'd have lost them in the first couple of minutes. If I'd have been watching Star Wars and the Sand People lost me, oh, I'm out. But if you have people watching, they've bought into your universe. They hopefully are starting to care about your characters. And so when all of a sudden one of your characters learns about the Force, well, the audience is learning about the Force with that character. We're learning about the Jedi. We're learning about that too. When you're when you are first arrival in the USS Enterprise, and you're meeting Kirk and Spock, and these are the characters, and you understand that Spock is a Vulcan. What's a Vulcan? We don't know what a Vulcan. I have no idea what a Vulcan is, but we're going to learn. And I'm like, okay, aliens, and we're going to buy into it. I don't need to understand it at first, and you don't need to explain everything, unless that's your thing. But then once you do that,
you have to stick to it.
You can't go changing it later.
And
on.
sometimes not knowing the answer to things is part of the journey and part of the excitement and the mystery of it.
And there's all kinds of things we can talk about with Star Trek, with especially the Klingons is a big one, and how the audience went from the Klingons in the original series to the Klingons in the motion picture, which were two different things. But then how Star Trek dealt with that to maintain their audience. Yeah. It's actually pretty fun. But anyway. In a nutshell, make the rules, stick with the rules. If you're going to change the rules, be very cautious, because your audience has bought into your universe, and if you go changing it too much, you're going to lose them.
Yeah. And sticking with this theme, next time, sticking with the theme of reality, next time we're going to be talking about gunplay and firefights in your films, which you'll love.
I love that stuff.